And
Hello and welcome to a brand new podcast called The Fantasy Den, sponsored or run by through the Asleep at Work network. Um, Brand new podcast. We're going to talk about all things fantasy, focusing on all the different things from what's happening each week, what to look out for, who to look out for, the types of leagues that we have, just everything fantasy and just be able to discuss it in an open, free way and maybe get some little digs in here and there and everywhere, given that we all support different teams and we'll all be wanting different things.
And we're
Um,
all in a number of leagues together.
and we're all in a number of leagues together. So, with me on this wonderful new journey this week is Gary, who is also someone who's obviously been with us from the college pod. He's also part of the NFC West pod that we do on a Sunday. That's obviously not
Yeah,
part of
need
the
to find
network,
a
but
home for that. Hmm.
we sort out. But we've got all of that to potentially sort out. Um, Gary, how are we doing this evening?
Very well, Sam. Looking forward to this. This is always a nice addition to our fandom of the NFL, having this running in the background. So it's nice to kind of get into a pod and start talking about it and stuff.
Yeah, it always feels like fantasy football and just the NFL seems to go hand in hand these days.
Yeah,
From
draft season on fantasy really builds you into week one and getting ready, doesn't it?
Yes. And also joining us today is our wonderful producer, Fletch. How are we doing today, Fletch? Obviously, you can see you've got the Jameer Gibbs
yes, we
photo.
have.
I'm sure there's probably a perfect reason why you've chosen him for this one.
Because we're talking about the number one, who I will do believe is going to be the number one player in fantasy football this year.
It's not-
Bookmark it, points, all the points. He's getting all the points. I'm doing very well. It's nice to be introduced rather than do introducing. I feel it feels really, really nice to be on this side of it. So, um, yeah, I will probably won't be in every week, but it's nice to be here for the first. Got to be here for the first one. Got to be.
Always here for the first one. And obviously, as your host, Sam, you'll know me again from the college pod, Fletch from the, so, it's a lot of familiar faces. You'll see us on the preview, you'll see us on maybe sometimes on the review, and various other ones. We do have someone who is also going to be a host who isn't here today. Unfortunately, he is busy playing football, or I'm assuming
He's at the
soccer.
football.
Um,
He's
so
at the
he's at
footy,
the
he said, didn't
football.
he? So
He's
I
at
think
the
he's
football
watching.
today. Oh, okay. I thought he was playing. Um, but we have also got our other co-host, Andy, who is going to be joining us. He's not, he'll be brand new to the network. So it'd be good to get someone else's insight and input into fantasy life and, you know, get someone else's opinion on it, which will be great.
They should be
Um,
sick of the sight of Fletch by the end of it, I
yeah,
think.
I mean,
Everyone already is,
I'm
mate.
going to be Fletch is going to be on three podcasts. I'm going to be on three podcasts. Gary's going to be on two.
Two,
It's
three,
you know,
four, who knows? Yeah, we're taking over
it's
the world. We're taking over the world.
yes. Um, so yeah, so one thing I would like to obviously talk about is obviously thank you for coming along. Anyone who's obviously listening into this or who's followed the AAW network so far, if you haven't, where have you been and what have you been doing? But if you do want to get involved and listen to more about the podcast, want to get involved, want to talk with us, talk with other people who are into fantasy, into college, into anything. Links are in the description below. We've got an amazing Discord where we talk about all things sporty and non-sporty. And we've got obviously everything else. We've got our Twitters, we've got everyone's X's, sorry, it's not Twitter anymore, it's X.
Well, it's
And all
always
the
going
other
to be
sort of
Twitter for us, let's be honest.
it is. Um, and all of those other things are be down in the description below. So, given it's the first podcast of the channel, what I thought we could do is just talk about how we got into fantasy football. What was our sort of lean into this? How did we get sort of involved? Was there a particular person who brought us in? Was there a particular style of fantasy football that we looked at? Do we go for a particular app? All those sorts of things. So, Gary, do you want to hit us off? How did you sort of get into fantasy football?
Well, so for me, it's a weird one because it's a recent addition, or it's a recent addition. Played fantasy football like years ago. I had American friends through an old game that I used to play, and I had friends in America, and we used to do fantasy football. But it was like, and looking around, Fletch, this will mean nothing to you, but Sam, you might remember it. There was an old Yahoo fantasy football site that was absolutely dire. But that was all we had. And that was, you could dig around from a UK perspective and kind of find it. And I was in a league with a couple of guys out in the US. But obviously, it was tricky back then, from a UK perspective. You didn't really get the stats that everybody gets now. You didn't have the updates. So it was one of those. And I'm a sucker for this, even with fantasy football and Premier League in the UK. Now you set your team up and then 6 weeks, 4 or 5 weeks in, you've forgotten about it because it's so awkward to find any information about and whatever else, and you totally forget about it. And then suddenly goes, "Oh, well, you won the league or you came last," and you go, "I totally forgot I was in that." So it was a real difficult thing, and that was like years and years ago. So I kind of fell out of it, and it was only been in the last sort of 3 years, I suppose, being a bit more active on social media, getting to know you guys, knowing a few other people, and really with knowing now the influx of better apps having stats available to us that I've kind of got into playing it a lot more. I kind of dived in 2 seasons ago, went mad, just had loads of sleeper leagues. Absolutely any league I saw that was being advertised, I was like, oh, I'll have some of that. I'll have some of that. Lucky enough to get into the Scotch Fish Bowl. Did okay, I'll say. Yeah, didn't embarrass myself, but like literally threw myself in wholeheartedly into the whole thing.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, yeah, there's so much nowadays. I think you think back to sort of 5, 6 years ago, you're talking maybe the odd fancy app. The NFL had one. I think that was the only one I knew of at the time when I first started. And now it's like you've got Fantrax, you've got Sleeper, you've got Yahoo still going about. Don't know
Still
how.
out there somewhere. God knows how. My MFL is quite big as well. Yeah.
NFL, ESPN have one, which I've tried, is awful. My fantasy league, MFL, absolutely dreadful. It was the first ever
Dreadful on a
league
mobile. Dreadful on a mobile. Don't ever play it.
First ever league I joined in that I did not understand it, but
Some people love it.
I managed to convince that league to move over to Sleeper, and
Yep.
I'm absolutely bossing it now. So maybe that's something.
Maybe that.
Fletch, what about you? How did you sort of get into fantasy football?
Yeah, so I'd been a fan of the NFL for a while. Started to get a little bit into college football, and I'd never played fantasy football. No, actually, I think I entered once, one year, like 2015, into the NFL Zone One. I didn't know what I was doing, had no one to help me, and I must have set up an account and somehow got into a league. I don't even think I did a draft. Definitely didn't draft, so I may have just got bounced from that league in the end, or it would have auto picked for me that year. Something happened, and there's someone out there who thinks I'm just some arsehole who joins leagues and doesn't do anything. And it went for a few years until COVID kind of hit, and I joined on with another podcast at the time, a Detroit Lions one, and they were like, "Oh, we're going to do a fantasy football league," and I was like, "Well, I've never done fantasy football before, really." So, but I'm down. I'm down to clown a little bit. I was just offered one piece of advice going into it. It was like, well, two pieces of one, don't overthink it. Things like ADPs, they're there for a reason. Most people who are doing it know what they're doing. Don't think you've got this weird esoteric knowledge that they're pick 962, but you know that they're going to be good, so you pick them number one overall. Don't be like that. Um, and don't go quarterback in the first round, first couple of
Mhm.
rounds. That was the two pieces of advice I was given. Um,
That
I
changed recently,
did,
didn't it?
yeah, very recently. Um, I did horribly that year to start off with. Managed to creep myself back up to. I was still in the bottom half. Ended up just missing out on the toilet bowl. Um, but I loved it. I love being part. I love doing it. I love going into sleeper every day, checking my team, trying not to overthink it, and definitely overthinking it. Rotating kickers every week because I'm overthinking it to that kind of level. Um, And then yeah, but couple more years, I didn't have any other leagues. So I left that podcast. I was no longer part of that. I had no leagues. It was one point I was begging people on Facebook, on the Facebook group, being like, anyone got any spare spots? I'll a paid league, I'll pay a fiver to get in just so I can do some fantasy football because I really enjoyed it. And now I'm sat here going, I should have said no to about five of them. I should have said no to people. In so many, I feel like I'm in so many now. I've only ever really done, so I'm in a lot of leagues. Last year I was in a lot of leagues. I think the year before that I was. The year before that I was begging people. I've only ever really done redrafts, and that's just kind of been it. That's what people are recruiting random people for is a redraft because you don't have to commit to someone you don't know really.
Hmm.
Um, Not your normal redraft PPRs. This year and well, last year I did my first couple of dynasties. This year I'm now
Get
on
ahead.
fan
Whoa,
tracks
whoa,
with
get ahead. Get ahead. Wait, wait, whoa, whoa, get ahead. Get.
so yeah, this year particularly has been quite an eye-opening one. I've known about all these different things. I've listened to you and you, Sam, talk about. I've listened to you, Gary, you talking about all the different fantasy leagues you're in. You see they're repping Scott's Fishbowl, um, all these different things. Was obviously I was in the Argyle Charity Bowl last year and seeing all the best ball leagues come through, and JTT Cup as well, another great best ball league. So yeah, that's kind of been my journey's been very much like did one, got hooked, didn't do it for a couple of years, begged people for me to do it again, and now I'm just doing too many. But
Yeah.
nothing. I've never really gone
Standard.
crazy.
Standards. I think that is the standard sort of trajectory of most people when they start doing it. They're not really sure. They do a couple and go, oh, and then they find one league that works for them and they love it. And
Yeah,
then they go mad and you end up in way too many leagues.
yeah,
And then eventually you just go, hang on, there's got to be a middle ground where these are the leagues I will continue playing in, and then I'll do these bulk early season, and then you forget about them, and we'll go into those sorts of things. You
yeah,
kind of touched on what they were called and whatever else in a
yeah.
second, and
Um,
then you kind of have to balance yourself because otherwise, as you say, you are literally on your phone all the time checking waivers, doing different
yeah.
trades, moving everywhere because there's just so many leagues.
And it's one of them, and this is one of the reasons why when look, Sam approached me last year and said, I think we in the AAW could be doing something fantasy football related, and I think it could be really, 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 really cool. Especially for those who kind of know fantasy but are still kind of getting into it and learning things. And look, as I said, I won't be. Hopefully, you won't be seeing my face every single week because we'll leave it to the capable you two and Andy. Um, I'll jump in as and when needed. So I'm doing this because I want to learn too, and I need to take in a lot of this information, and I'm hearing all these different variations. Just before we started recording, you talk about these different variations. Going, I want to do that. I want to do that.
Yeah,
I want to do that. Um, so yeah, just that's kind of where I'm at with it. I think really.
Yeah. For me, I suppose to kind of, I suppose, understand my where my, I suppose, life in fantasy is, I actually started doing fantasy football before I started properly watching the NFL, which is weird. But that's because I did obviously very big into my Premier League, FPL leagues, and various other leagues like that. And one of my friends who was big into the NFL. He got me into NFL, and he was the guy. He basically had set up a league, and he said, "Look, I know you like doing fantasy. I know you don't really watch the NFL, but do you want to do a league? And we'll try it out, and you can see how you like it." And I think it was his way of basically going, "Nudge, nudge, come watch American football with me because I don't have many other people else to watch it with." Um, so I joined a fantasy league on the NFL app, redraft league, and did okay. Didn't do too bad. I mean, again, very much like you, probably just went straight off ADP. Players that I knew of, like Tom Brady, all the stat padders that everyone knows, like Gronkowski, um, and really enjoyed it. Built up a bit of a more of a knowledge in terms of understanding how fantasy leagues work through watching the league. So I don't know if any of you have
Yeah,
seen, I'm sure you will have seen the TV series The League. Watch that. I found it absolutely hilarious. Obviously, that as well is very sort of intrinsic within fantasy football. And that's kind of how I then got hooked into doing NFL and fantasy football in general anyway. Um, and yeah, just started finding more leagues, meeting more people. COVID really obviously hit, and I got very into NFL fantasy football, and yeah, just kind of took off from there. So I mean, me personally, obviously mentioned it already. I run the Argyle Charity Bowl, which is a charity event in honor, well, in memory of my uncle who passed away. Oh God, 2, 3 years ago now.
2 years. You've been running
4 years
it for
ago?
2 years, so I think you passed
Yeah,
3 years ago, wasn't it? Yeah.
yeah, 3 years ago. Time flies by. Um, and although I mean, you got obviously when you say I see it on there, he wasn't into NFL at all. He loved Plymouth Argyle, and I wanted to be able to sort of bring in my love of NFL with his love of Plymouth, and set up the Argyle Charity Bowl, and we've sort of grown from there really with that. Obviously, it's now part of a wider best ball UK based group. So obviously, winning the Argyle Charity Bowl gets you into the Best Ball UK Champions League for 2 years, which is partnered with the JTT Cup. We've got the Orkney Charity Bowl, which is run by Johnny. MND, which is Steve Campbell?
The MND Bowl, yeah. Is that
Yeah,
Steve Lawson?
Steve
No, Steve Lawson does the Rainbow Bowl.
Pestle.
Pestle does the MND Bowl, yeah.
You've then got the
TF
TH.
TH
Yeah, TF.
underscore
Yeah,
yeah, that one. Yeah.
there's another one.
There's
And
a
there's
few.
also,
There's a few.
yeah,
We're all in them anyway. Yeah.
yeah, there's 6 of us, all sort of UK based, and we all sort of thought of this idea and we ran with it. Alongside that, something that I did sort of
Warrior
slightly
Bowl. Yeah,
before.
that in there as well. Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway.
Warrior Ball's not involved, but they're obviously another big one, which I'm in this year. But I also run what's known as Red Zone Madness, which is my variance leagues. So again, we'll come on to that at another point. We can go through those on another pod. And I also run the Nuts Fans Fantasy League, which is a fans-based league where basically just got a fan from every single team, and basically it's just work out which fan knows the most about fantasy football. And so far
Or
we've
the
had
least.
or the least, yeah. And so far we've had a Dallas Cowboy who won it year one. No, he didn't. The Chiefs won it year one, and year two was actually a Jacksonville Jaguar fan who won it, who's still in it today, this day. So, yeah, which both of you I think are in that league as well, which is good. So yeah, I mean, I suppose the height of my fans, like you mentioned, where we kind of got a bit crazy, was about not 3 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. I actually was in 83 different leagues, which was a silly amount of leagues. I basically just kind of jumped straight in and went 2 feet deep into it. And now I've sort of, like you guys, most of the leagues that are on my sleeper app are leagues that I run, not leagues that I'm involved in. So I still have a lot of leagues, but I'm more commissioning them rather than actually involved in them, which is a lot more. But I've still got a lot of leagues. I'm just slowly whittling them down to the ones I actually want to do. But yeah, so just as a quick mention, obviously with the Argyle Charity Bowl, you can go and check them out. Again, similar to the others, links in the description below to follow the Argyle Charity Bowl this year. We're not taking any more sign-ups for this year because we've already drafted, so you can't get involved. But keep an eye out, and we're always looking for people to join, and we should be opening the 2026 ones probably mid to end of next year, of the actual season, to start getting people involved. So, but if you want to keep up with it and see how it's doing, see who's top of the league, who's potentially going to win it, who's not doing so well, check that out on the Twitter page. I think it's Argyle Sea Bowl, I think it's called. So
basically, have a look on there. It'll just be a Fletch loving fest at that point, really, because I'll be at the top of it. Yeah.
I mean, you did quite well. You did quite well to start with, and then you tailed off, and then you kind of started to come back, but didn't quite make it back.
Yeah.
But it's a fun league, and I think a lot of people. It's like anything. It's about charity. It's about getting people involved in the charity.
Absolutely.
And I think this year we've raised about £600 this year.
Amazing.
So far, and I think we're totaling. How much are we at now? I think it's just shy of 1,800 over the 3 years. So quite a lot. Obviously, raised quite a lot of money for the Thames Hospice. and we'll continue to do that going forward.
And
That's what
that's the
it's all
most
about.
important thing. Raising money for a fantastic cause, but by doing so, you get to do a bit of fantasy football, which
Yeah.
just makes it more fun. So
And it's
definitely.
best ball, so you can just leave it and just watch yourself either do really well or just kind of go, well, oh well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to mention as well, by the way, because to kind of not well, ever so slightly change the topic. You know, we talked about ESPN before, and the
Yeah.
ESPN fantasy one. I got added to my first ESPN fantasy league this year, and all like I've almost exclusively used Sleeper the past few years. I'm very lucky. I got my first proper experience in Sleeper.
Yeah.
Never again. I by the time the draft was halfway through, I'd messaged the guy and said, "Do it on Sleeper next year, or I'm not doing it."
Mm.
Um,
ESPN is such a weird app
Mm.
for fantasy, and I don't like the way that you have the lineups are set up on there either.
no.
It's just not what I like to do. But
But
I think you'll tend to find a lot of people tend to use Sleeper now. Sleeper is
Sleeper's
I would say
become
the
the
leading.
premier app, hasn't it? It's the
it is.
leading app.
Yeah, and I
It's
mean, I think the fact that they've sort of extended, obviously, you can do the NBA on there. You can do,
Yes.
can
Pick'ems.
you do hockey on there?
You can.
I
And you can
think
do
yeah,
Fantasy
you can
Premier
do all
League.
of them. You can do
You can do
Premier League on there. You can
baseball.
do
Yeah, you
baseball.
can
You
do
can do
Premier League. Obviously, you've got
yeah.
all the
From a
different.
UK perspective, they can, but yeah, from US, they've got all the main US sports. So I think it's
Yeah,
just exploded, and that's why
you've got
Sleeper's become de facto the one app that
yeah,
everyone
and
uses.
Yeah.
you've got all the pick'ems and everything that are on there. The Survivor League. Obviously, they brought in the Survivor Leagues, and
Yeah,
this year we've got the Chopper League, which is a
Guillotine League,
guillotine
and
league, which we'll
yeah,
cover in another episode when we
Um,
talk about different variant leagues.
I've got a question. While we're all getting to know each other, well, not us three, but like as our audience is getting to know us, I've got a question. So I want to know what one of some of your favorite fantasy football moments have been, or some of your worst fantasy football moments. I can't particularly think of a favorite of mine. Never actually won a league. I've come close, but never won a league. I could say that just avoiding the toilet bowl was probably the best one because I was really thought I was going to be in it one year. But my worst ever time doing fantasy football was a few years ago. I went into Monday Night Football 49 points ahead of of the person I was against. And as you do, I went to sleep that night. This was that first year of doing it. Went to sleep that night and thought, this literally all I have to. I'm just waiting for the notification to say I've won. Waiting for the W to go. That was the night that Tyreek Hill had that 52-point game, and I was against Tyreek Hill that week. Um,
That's a killer.
so I want anything like that you've had while playing fantasy football. One of a killer or something you've yeah.
Yeah, like you, I've never been particularly successful in any leagues. I've kind of just enjoyed playing them and enjoyed the banter that comes from being in different leagues. I suppose one of the major like brain fart moments is one league I was drafting in. It was loads of drafts. Everyone you had to pick a player from every team. Da, 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 da. Got right to the end. Finally, everyone was drafted. And I hadn't drafted a kicker, and therefore every week my team was completely null and void and couldn't score any points. So that was a great league for that whole season. I was just getting ribbed. I was all consistently getting ribbed because you had to have a kicker, and once it was drafted, you couldn't draft anybody. It was just such a nightmare. But it was funny. It was a good laugh. One of those sorts of things. Blockbuster trades I've been involved in where you kind of sell your first round pick for Christian McCaffrey and half the worlds of picks, and it just completely shook up a whole different league. Stuff like that. I mean, it's just so much fun involved in that. I've got nowhere near winning a league yet, but early days.
Oh yeah, early days.
Yeah, I mean, I've mixed bag in terms of what I've done in terms of fantasy football. Some leagues I do all right in, some leagues I do absolutely terrible in. It just honestly depends on how well I'm doing. But I wanted to talk about. I'm not sure if I don't think either of you two have been in this league in particular. Why is it doing this? I think I've absolutely fucked the league. What I've done.
Messed the league up is what Sam has done. If
I'm
if
just
you're
trying to well, I've got
watching,
league history, and it's brought me back to 2022 because I was
yeah, be careful.
looking.
Be careful. You do not restore that league from where you're looking, because otherwise you'll be in trouble.
Why has it done that?
While Sam's just going
Anyway,
through.
it was a league that I'm in, and basically, my team is amazing, quite frankly. It's one of my favourite leagues. Oh, it's sorted itself out now. Let me go back to previous leagues. No, league history. That's what I wanted. 2023 was the year that I won it, and if I can look at it, 2023. Look at my goddamn team. 2023, the year that I won it, my team, and this is more so because I don't know if because of the people that I was drafting with, and only sort of, some of them were only the first times that they drafted, but essentially my team was made up of. I remember doing this. This was the league that I drafted on MFL before we moved over to Sleeper, and my draft was insane. I managed to pick up Josh Allen. Bear in mind, one QB league, picked up Josh Allen. I've got Christian McCaffrey, Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp when he was back at his prime. I had Joe Burrow, who I picked up in the last pick, the last pick of the round, well, the first round of the rookie draft that we did. So I have him as my backup. So I got Josh Allen and Joe Burrow. And then I had a bunch of other players that sort of filtered in with all of those. Well, that is my favourite team of all time. And I mean, just looking at the league now, my team at the moment ready to go into week one: Josh Allen, Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, Justin Jefferson, Ted McMillan, Chiggy Okonkwo, Devontae Smith, Javonte Williams, no, Jameson Williams, not Javonte Williams, Jameson Williams,
Important to get
Tyler
those
Bass,
right.
and then the Jets.
Yeah,
So
okay.
this team it's heat, and it's my favourite team that I've got. And funnily enough, even though I've got all those players, I've only won the league twice. So I won it the very first year that we did it, and I won it the third year, but I haven't won it every single year because
McCaffrey blew you up last week.
yeah, McCaffrey got injured. I think there was one year where Jefferson spent a lot of time out injured, and Cooper
Yeah.
Kupp spent a lot of time out injured. So I've had all these great players, but they just keep getting injured, and that's one of the problems with fantasy football. Is you can pick as many as you want. The moment they get
Yeah.
injured, you're screwed.
Yeah, done. Yeah, and that's, I mean, I suppose that, we just touched on it. Last year, everyone, I mean, the majority of people, I was one of them, I had the 101 pick. And yes, we all did it. Anyone who had the 101 pick last year, first pick, CMC. After the year he had the year before, everybody went CMC. And then obviously CMC just didn't play for 9 weeks or whatever it was, and your pick's gone. Your team, your whole process. And yes, it's only one pick. And everyone say, oh, you still got loads of other picks to go. That 101 pick, that first round pick is so important in fantasy. If you mess it up, or if that player just doesn't perform, or is a bust, and CMC was a complete and utter bust last year, it
Yeah, because
messes
you
with everything.
in a standard 12-man league, you pick him first and then 24th.
Yeah,
So you've got the best player. If he gets injured, your next best player is the 24th best player,
yeah. And
compared to
then
everyone else who'll have
two,
two on,
two,
two
two.
to
Their
20.
two best players will way outshine your best player, which ends up being, as you say, potentially the 24th best player, depending on picks, whatever else. Yeah, it was last year for a lot of people in fantasy, and it probably did lose a lot of fantasy new people because they all kind of did the same thing, and they got in and they picked CMC and they thought, oh, it's fantasy great, and then it's rubbish. So that's the joy and or the downside or whatever else. But what I love about fantasy football is that we're all different fans. Obviously, Sam, you're a Rams fan. I think we can all work out who Fletch supports. I'm a Niners fan,
Go
but
Texans.
the joy of fantasy football is there are games where your teams are not playing, and there are games which potentially don't really make much of a difference. But if you've got a player, you
Yeah.
suddenly invested in that game. You're suddenly like, oh, I might watch that game. Or that is, and honestly, Scott Hansen are a savior. I think without Scott Hansen and Red Zone and fantasy football hand in hand, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
Because every time there's an update, every time there's a touchdown, you're like, is that a player I've got? Oh, and it adds a whole level of excitement and joy, and it just keeps you more involved in the game. And I think, as you say, Sam, how you started, you played fantasy and then got involved in NFL. You've done it a slightly different way, but I think it adds to your experience. It adds to the enjoyment of watching football when you've got skin in the game. You might as well call it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the fact that you can fancy football, especially for me, helps me build my knowledge of just general other teams. Because if I'm just sitting here, I mean, supporting the Rams, the
You only
likelihood is
watch
I'm
the Rams,
probably
right?
just going to watch the Rams. I only
Yeah.
watch the Texas Longhorns. So what is it? Why would I only just then watch the LA Rams?
Even
So
jump.
this kind of gave me the ability to, I suppose, go into the NFL, and it allowed me to actually pick a team, because I was then picking a team based upon players, rather than picking a team based upon, normally you do it where you live or that, but we don't have that luxury. So I was able to just do it based upon players that I liked. And, the guy that I really liked when I first started watching was Aaron Donald and Cooper Kupp. So, you know, it was that was how I sort of got into it. I mean, it's like looking at this team now. I have no interest in the Carolina Panthers versus the Jacksonville Jaguars, but I do because I've got 10 million in one of my
Yeah.
leagues. So that's how I'm going
Jump.
to be keeping an
I
eye
think
on that game. Sorry.
I was going to make a very similar point there, though, Sam. That I think when you play fantasy football, sorry, it having that investment, as Gary has said, in all those other games, and having that skin, and paying that little bit more attention to games across it, allows you to take in that information a lot more and builds your broader depth of league wide. Everyone, whether you play fantasy football or not, you know just how good Jamar Chase is. You know just how good Justin Jefferson is and Lamar Jackson. We know these things anyway, but especially some of those guys you get, say, in the fourth round, fifth round of drafts, those are guys who obviously you won't particularly be hearing as much of during the season. Um, Allows you to have that knowledge of those people. And the only thing there is a downfall to it, and then because there are fantasy football first people, and these are very similar to the stat sheet first people, is the numbers
XG
put up.
goals, people.
You make the judgment on the player based on the numbers they put up. Whereas I know both of you in this room, Sam, you do only watch the Rams and Texas, but we understand a little bit more to there is a little bit more nuance to the game, as long as yeah, the stats are important, but if Amon-Ra doesn't get, say, 10 targets, 8 receptions for 120 yards, that doesn't mean he's had a bad game or he's a bad player, and that hasn't happened. Is it being utilized in the run game and blocking? He's being utilized doing this. He's so having that, the one thing I think with a lot of people with fantasy seem to forget is like just certain fantasy people just judge based on the numbers they put up in fantasy for a couple of weeks, and then that's
And also,
their
they get
perception.
very upset when certain players don't do well as well,
Yeah.
which is quite
And
funny
I
to
think
say.
and I think on that front, and I think this is probably quite important, from a UK perspective, I don't think we are as invested in
No.
fantasy as our US counterparts. I
Mm.
think a lot of money and a lot of things are riding on players, and a lot of betting is laid based on fantasy football and based on that. So, and I think that's where on social media you will see a lot of screaming, wailing, gnashing of teeth because instead of Saquon scoring, they do the tush push in Philly because it means that Saquon doesn't get the touchdown bonuses and whatever else, and lots of stuff like that, and it causes such a furore. And I think it is a lot of US based because money is changing hands, and in the UK, I
Yeah.
think a lot of us play it for playing its sake. We are
Yeah.
not. We're not betting our houses and not betting our savings or the weekly whatever's on it. Whereas I think some of the US guys betting is a major part of their watching experience, and it causes obviously problems and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And whilst we don't condone or say that that's a bad thing, we do obviously from a UK perspective just say if you are gambling on the game, please do it responsibly and follow our good teams win, great teams covers bets that will be coming
Yes.
later.
Yes.
Yes. And
I'm a pro at this.
whilst we're on the subject of gambling, we just wanted to give a quick shout out to our sponsors, Fantasy Game Day. if you want to get involved, if you like a bit of betting,
DFS kind of
a
stuff,
little
isn't
bit
it,
of
basically?
betting, you like a little bit of fantasy, why not put the two together and join Fantasy Game Day, where you can basically pick a lineup. If you've ever done it before, DraftKings, it's basically the UK version of DraftKings when DraftKings decided we don't want to be in the UK anymore. And Fantasy Game Day decided to basically step up the mark and just decide to do their own. So great shout to the guys over there. We will say though, as lovely as they are to us, you can use a particular code of ours that they've lovingly given to us, where if you sign up, get involved, and join Fantasy Game Day, and use the code HRDLE, that's hurdle without the U.
But there's no hurdle the line without you.
Glad we did
Aye.
that. It's my line, but I'm glad someone else did it because I felt weird having to do it myself. They will give you a free £7.50 bet, which you can then use on a game or multiple games. And then you can use it to then obviously to bet on. You do have to deposit, but the deposit is, I think it's a minimum of £5, and it's not that bad. But you get a free £7.50 bet, which you can use across multiple games or on one. Go and give them a check out. Again, links will be in the description. And
I think they've upped it this year as well, haven't they? I know last year, because as you say, they stepped in when DraftKings left the UK market, and the UK. While I already mentioned that we're not that invested, there is a market here.
Yes.
Fantasy Game Day stepped in. They had a small offering at the beginning, and even the boys will say that they tested the waters with a standard. I think it was £2.50 flat rate.
Yeah, I
And
think there was
you
three
couldn't
On a
different
win.
Sunday.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was £3, £5,
three
and then £7.50 with a
something,
three.
and maximum winnings wasn't beyond the realms of possibility. And it also meant
Yeah.
you weren't,
And
putting a
they were
massive
running on
stake
a
in. I
Sunday as
believe,
well, weren't they?
yeah,
Yeah, I think there were some sizable winnings. Like you
there
could
were
make
some. You
some
still
good
could
money
make
off.
200-300 quid and stuff like that, which is sizable
it.
when your stake is 250 or £5 or whatever else. It was a big win. I think they have realised that there are some bigger players, and I think they're upping their stakes this year. So
Yes.
they're filling that gap that DraftKings has left, and fair play to them. And as you say, it's a bit of fun. Please make sure that you use it in the way that it's intended. It's a little bit of fun. It's a little bit of way to add to your enjoyment. Gamble responsibly. If the fun stops, stop. All of those official kind of things. But we
And if
love the
you're on,
guys.
and it's for people who are 18 and over, just to remember that, because we did have a bit of accidental pushing of children to bet on the college pod, but it was accidental.
It was.
So,
Whoever did
you know.
that, we sacked him. Nowhere to be
So yeah,
seen.
so
They were
big up,
demoted. They were demoted for a week.
yeah, big up Fantasy Game Day. It's a good thing to have. I think for people who do enjoy doing that sort of thing. And also just to give another shout out to another pod on the AAW we mentioned before, the Preview Hurdle the Line podcast, where if you want to give them a listen, it's funnily enough, it's me that's doing it. So yeah, go and listen to it. Where we'll be giving sort of some hot takes and not hot picks and not hot picks of who to take in the Fantasy Game Day on particular weeks or each week. There'll be Carl is over there as well, and he usually likes to do a couple as well. So all the more to listen to that, and it also means you get to listen to another podcast.
Exactly.
And
So
you help the Sleep at Work network.
you do.
Yeah.
You've neglected to say that. I'm also on there, so you probably don't want to really listen to it. But we've also
Only listen to Sam's bit.
But to be fair, Sam, obviously Sam, you're on it. You obviously we've got Carl there as well. And we've got Ballers Meg on Thursdays as well this year. So who are all of which have liked to have a flutter on Fantasy Game Day and did last year. So we have a couple of knowledgeable people on there, and I'm on there, and yeah, it should be a lot of fun. And that drops Friday morning, 6 a.m. GMT on all podcast platforms of your choice.
Yes. Whilst we're on the topic of hot picks and hot picks, we're going to do something similar this week. I'm probably going to see it every week, but we're going to do it slightly differently because we're obviously predominantly fantasy based. We're talking about fantasy football. We're not going to do too much in terms of the betting side of it. We're going to leave that to the preview show. But we're going to be looking at individual players each week. We're going to have two people that we're choosing to start, two people that we're choosing to bench each week, and we're going to look at how they do against a standard PPR league in terms of their projections, and that's how we'll work it. Each of us has our own position, which we are going to make our own. So, Gary, you're taking the joys of running backs. Very, very, very
deep running back.
running backs. We've got Andy, who's on wide receivers, and we've got myself on tight ends. Now, obviously, I think what we'll probably do is when Fletch is here, he'll be taking on quarterbacks. When he's not, we'll get him to give us our picks, and we'll talk about them through that. So he's still involved. He's still in here with us, and when he needs to step in, he can do
in
it.
with spirit. But nobody,
But
I mean, the quarterbacks aren't that important anyway, really.
No,
Not in PPR leagues.
they usually just they're there to make up the numbers, really, aren't they? Kickers are way more important.
Way more important.
Kickers are people too, you know.
Kickers are people too, don't forget.
It's called football.
So, yes, what we'll do, we're each going to give a couple of each starters and benches. This week we're probably going to do a bit more of a discussion around them, maybe sort of see if there's any that we agree or disagree with. But moving forward, we are just going to be spending a lot of the time looking back at how well they have done, and then not so much on the discussion around each individual pick. Because we want it to be that we've got semi-experts in each of the position, and we want to then either laud them with praise for what they've done or laugh at them when they get it wrong. So that's how I like to see it. Just a little bit of fun, a little bit of banter, a little bit of banter between friends, and if we do well, we do well. If we don't, we don't.
No harm, no foul.
Yeah, and if anyone who's listening, if they want to take on our choices, then
we can run a fan competition.
Yeah. Yes. At the end of the day, though, if you choose one of the players that we pick and get it wrong, you can't blame us, because at the end of the day, it's your team still. Do what you want to do. We are just giving our opinions. However, if we do well,
all the caveats if you do well and you win on Fantasy Game Day, then obviously a donation to the Argyle Charity Bowl would be more than welcome.
Absolutely.
Right, where do we start then? Start at the top.
I think we start with the most important position. We'll start with kick. Now I'm joking. We'll start with quarterback.
Start with the tight end.
Right. So I want to run me one more time. Just what you want me to give you two that I'm starting to that I've cut this week.
Two starts, two sits.
We'll do the two starters, two sits, and just a little bit of reasoning behind them. Just to let everyone know, we aren't going to be going with obvious ones. So if you're going to be choosing, we're not going to be mentioning the likes of Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen, because at the end of the day, if you aren't picking them, what are you doing? Quite frankly,
if you've not picked Joe Burrows, Joe Allen, you're not meant to be in fantasy football, or you've gone completely left field. Everyone knows if you've got them in your team, you're starting them. These are the flyers, right? These are the potential ones that might win you this week because it's a little bit under the radar, or it's third or fourth down.
Yeah. So what my two starts this week, my sneaky starts, I've got Trevor Lawrence. He's a little bit goofy, Liam Cohen, but everything I've seen so far from what he's actually doing in terms of on the field, in the practice sessions, in the preseason, I think he's going to do something really, really, really nice for Trevor Lawrence this year. We know Trevor Lawrence can ball. Trevor Lawrence can ball.
Well, do we?
But doing it on a consistent basis with the talent around him has been the massive problem. And Doug Peterson. Liam Cohen will hopefully be. I think Liam Cohen will be the guy to do it. They've got the Panthers this weekend, who I think will be a very good team, and that defense and those DBs are nothing to shake a stick at. But knowing how week one matchups tend to play out, Trevor Lawrence to come out a little bit excited, a little bit more exciting, sling the ball a little bit, put some yards up, and potentially a few touchdowns in there as well. My other sneaky start would be Kyler Murray.
Yes.
On the basis of he's playing the New Orleans Saints this weekend.
I've got a feeling there might be a theme this week.
And yeah, probably. They haven't got a particularly very good offense, but their defense is nothing that particularly sends any worries to anybody anywhere ever. I am sorry to Mrs. Fletch for this, but I would be starting as many offensive players as I can that are playing against the New Orleans Saints this weekend. Kyler Murray being one of them, and hopefully, just to add to that, that relationship with Marvin Harrison Jr. should be much more well gelled, better gelled in comparison to last year. So again, passes through the air, yards on the ground. I'd expect Kyler Murray to be getting both of them this weekend.
Yeah, I like those two picks. I think Trevor Lawrence is an interesting one. I think you know, am I right in saying that this is in the new stadium as well because they're having the other one refurbished, or has that not been done yet?
I
So
can.
I thought they were moving homes because they were.
They're playing,
Oh,
yeah, they're playing temporarily in where is it they're playing?
they're in a new stadium. Well, not a new stadium, but
Bear
they're
with.
in a different stadium. But I don't know what it
Bear
is.
with
Should have
me.
probably looked it before, but
Oh no, it's according to this area, they're at Everbank this weekend.
oh,
Um.
At some
Oh,
point
so
they're
no, sorry.
gonna.
The Jaguars will play at home for the 25-26 and the 26-27 seasons, according to Jaguars.com. So I'm inclined to believe that.
Hmm,
okay.
okay, I thought they were moving, and maybe they're in a few seasons' time then
Yeah, I thought they were
when they
moving.
rebrand themselves to the Tottenham Hotspur Jaguars or
Yeah.
Wembley Jaguars. Anyway, moving on.
Either way, I think it's going to be a bit of a resurgence for the Jags anyway. I
Yeah,
think they couldn't have got much worse than they have been. I do think that when you watch Trevor Lawrence, I think he has flashes of absolute brilliance, but unfortunately, he also that O line just never helps him out.
No,
And I think if like
the
Fletcher,
curse of the first rounder, right? It's the curse of the first pick in the first round.
yeah,
You're inevitably going to a team that sucked. I mean, his first year was obviously, unfortunately, then also tied in with Urban Meyer coming out of college, thinking he can treat, you know, full-grown adults as college football players, and that went horribly wrong. So I think Trevor Lawrence got a pass for that first year. Doug Peterson came in. Second year was much better. Third year regression. Now he's on his. I mean, you feel for him. He's on his third head coach now
yeah.
in what is his
4 years.
fifth 5 years. So he's still. I think he's still on his rookie contract in effect.
He's coming into he's just about
Yeah.
stepping into his fifth year, isn't he?
Yeah.
So
So
so he's and that's another thing as well. He's about to go into his last year of his
contract
contract,
year. Yeah.
which usually is the year he's got his make or break. So he's got
Well,
to prove that.
he's already on the new
I think.
contract though, and so
Yeah. I
they've
think
I
already
don't
done the
think he is.
they've
extensions on
already
it,
done
and they're
it. I
50
think
odd
he's
million a
playing
year.
out his fifth year, but his contract is already
Yeah,
done, and he signed up his second
Um,
term type thing. But
so
yeah, I mean, three head coaches in 5 years is enough for any team to struggle with, especially a quarterback. But
and
he was picked as the generational talent of the draft year that he was there,
yeah,
and as you say, he has got flashes of it. So fingers crossed, this is the year where he can step up. He's got some weapons around him, that's for sure.
I mean,
yeah,
you look at if you take last season out of it, where he only got 2,000 yards, he got in his first season he got 3,600 yards, 12 touchdowns. Second year, 4,000 yards, 25 touchdowns, and the third season, 4,000 yards, 21 touchdowns. So it's not like he's not putting up numbers.
Yeah,
It's just when you then go to the next column along, and it's all about the interceptions. You've got 17 interceptions, 8 interceptions, 4 interceptions, 7 interceptions. So he's had
yeah,
46 interceptions in 4 years. He's averaging 10 a year.
yeah.
Not
That's
bad
not
numbers,
bad,
but
but it's
it's
not
not.
great for a team which is still, if they had the first round pick for him, they're obviously still in a rebuild. They're still not quite out of that yet. So you kind of need a bit cleaner. But as you say, he's not helped by his O line, which doesn't give him the cleanest pockets, etc. But I agree with you. He's definitely one that you should be starting this week.
yeah.
Bit of a flyer going against the Titans, right? They're going against this week. Or is it Panthers?
Panthers this
Panthers.
week.
So the Panthers, who are 2 years later than where the Jaguars are. They've been, they're still in rebuild. They're not a great team either. So that's a good
Yeah,
shout on that one, I
they've,
think.
they've got a solid defense, and they've added pieces to it, but it's not like they're coming up against a top 10 defense.
No,
It's still middle of the pack. So there's opportunities there for them to put up points, I suppose.
put up points and to get their new players and to get that offense gelled and get a bit of chemistry flying already. So yeah,
Yeah,
good shout there, and I think absolute no brainer that you'd be starting Kyler Murray this week.
I think
As I say,
we talk about it.
there's get there's going to be a bit of a theme because I'm probably when we move to running backs. Let's be honest, I think I know who I'm starting at running back.
Yeah. My two sits of the week. I don't know if we're allowed two obvious sits, but these two stand out to me really, really, really stand out to me at the moment. Aaron Rodgers going to sit that man. I don't like the Steelers have one of the worst receiver rooms in the NFL, I think, at this moment in time. That doesn't help. And plus going back to well, I'm not exactly so no, they're at home against the Jets. They're not on the road to the Jets. Now the Jets won't have
No,
any.
they're at the Jets, aren't they?
No, they're at home.
Anyway,
They're at MetLife Stadium.
they're at MetLife. Yeah, I thought they were at Jets.
They're at
How does
MetLife.
this list it wrong then? I don't. I'm not saying you guys are wrong. This is
You're
wrong.
reading it in the English way where it's Steelers at
No,
home.
no, it says versus New York Jets, but above it in this list says at Denver. So it's doing the at and versus and
Um,
got it wrong.
I hate that.
So I
Anyway,
apologize. This thing is wrong. I'm just reading off this thing. Um, yeah, okay. Traveling to MetLife, that crowd is not going to be up for letting him have an easy day. The Jets aren't going to be incredible, but I fancy Aaron Glenn to get that defense playing a bit tougher. And do you know what? I fancy that defense to want to leave a little something on Aaron Rodgers as well, after the way it and after the way his time kind of happened in New York. So. I'm
all
not a
24 seconds of it.
yeah. I'm not a huge fan of Aaron Rodgers this weekend. Don't think it's going to be pretty for him. I think Spencer Rattler is too obvious as of a sit.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Remember, it's the unobvious sits here.
yeah. I'm gonna. I've been on a bit of a toss up, but I think my main one's going to be at the moment Russell Wilson.
Yeah,
I do believe he's the starter at the Giants. That Washington defense was nasty last year against some pretty good quarterbacks. I don't think Russell Wilson's a pretty good quarterback anymore. You saw what the likes of Mike Sanistril did to a Goff who seemed to be in a really good rhythm and and then just completely just threw him for 5 turnovers in a game. I
I
don't
don't think
see
that Giants' offensive line is any good either, to be honest.
no. The defensive line will be, I think, will be very, very good, but that offensive line is going to be battered and bruised from just going up against that defensive line in practice. So I don't predict Russell Wilson to have a very, very good day on Saturday. I predict the likes of Mike Sanistril to have a nice little eased way into the league this year,
Yeah,
into warm up for week 1.
yeah, I
it's
mean
interesting.
that Steelers Jets game just has low score written all over it. They're
It just
barely
has
going to get
12.
Yeah.
It just has 12-9 written all over it, doesn't it, or
Yeah,
something like that? It's like horrible that one. I
yeah,
I'm interested. It's interesting what you say there. I was toying, thinking about your picks, Fletch, of sitting the guy on the other side of Russell Wilson because of although I don't think the Giants' offense looks great, I think that Giants' defense could be quite scary. And I'm
Yeah.
potentially thinking, as a bit of a left field one, sitting Jaden Daniels for week 1 because that
Well,
is a tough matchup.
this one of the things, as I'm going through quarterbacks, obviously Jaden Daniels is one of the names that comes up, and I'm thinking, well, it seems like a no-brainer to start Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels is the second coming. The Jaden Daniels is the greatest thing since like, but Abdul Carter and that Giants D line's a
Thibodeau and
bit nasty,
yeah,
and Thibodeau and that's a bit nasty, and I don't know. I think he's good enough to. They'll figure something out. He'll get points. He'll put points up. But he's not one of those where I'm like, you need to start him. I need to start him now because he will. There will be periods of that game that are ugly for him as well.
yeah.
So
Yeah, I think the Daniels one's interesting. I would he would be in my category of I would never drop him because only because of the fact that it's I think with a league like most fantasy leagues, mobile quarterbacks are always so sought after. That's why, last year Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen were the two highest scoring players, and the likes of Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes aren't always the top QBs because if you've got the ability to move and the ability to rush, you're also going to pick up a lot of points, getting touchdowns,
Yes.
getting yards, and that. So my only argument would be with that is that to me, Jaden Daniels he's the first name on the sheet every single week for me. I get it because that defense is very difficult, but I still think that Daniels has enough that he would easily make the projections that he probably would be. He's going to be around 20, 21 point
20,
projection.
22, I
So
My
think, or something like that. So
my thought though would be that if you've got Jaden Daniels, you've probably picked him up really early, and you haven't gone for a backup until quite late. And the
yeah,
difference between having Jaden Daniels as your number one, and then you've got Spencer Rattler on the bench, like it's
Jackson
just
Dart,
happening.
yeah,
Either
yeah.
way, I don't give a crap if Jaden Daniels could be going up against 19 Kalen Thibodeau's, and I'd still take him.
yeah, it's,
It's just
he,
an
But at the
interesting
same
sort of
time,
throwing it out there, but I'm just, yeah.
I'm thinking of some of those. Who are some of those mid-range QBs you were picking that people picking up? Not in that first couple, those first couple of rounds, where you
Mm.
genuinely have a debate where you've got, I don't know, Michael Penix and you've got uh, a Trevor Lawrence on your tier. Who would I pick out of them? So you've got JJ, you've got a Bryce Young and a or a CJ Stroud. That's kind of the battle that I was having in my head. And Jaden Daniels
yeah.
does, like you say, at this point though, kind of he feels like an obvious, so it also just feels a bit too. Well, yeah, just
This
start
was
him.
difficult because I think there's a lot of tighter games or obvious games. There's no real sort of like Eagles Cowboys. Are you going to really be starting Dak Prescott if you've got someone else who's potentially going to be around the same level as Dak? Because realistically, well, you're picking up Dak in probably like the sixth, seventh round, well, maybe like eighth, ninth
Maybe
round.
eight. Yeah.
So you'll probably have picked up Dak and then picked up someone else to kind of counteract that midness that comes with those. So you'll probably have like a Purdy and a Dak.
Yeah,
So to me, dropping Dak, you would do it because you'd probably play Purdy in
yeah,
their game. Or it's those ones. I think but yeah, I mean it's still an interesting one. I think if you've got the bollocks to be able to drop Jane Daniels, then by all means go for it. If you've got, to be honest, if you've got someone like
Kyler
maybe
Murray.
someone like a Baker Mayfield or a Bo Nix or someone like that, you could
yeah.
maybe throw them
You
in
wouldn't
instead
have,
of
yeah,
him.
you
But
wouldn't have
If
Knicks. I think if you've got Daniels, probably got Knicks, but you might have Kyler Murray because Murray was going a bit later, or
yeah,
yeah,
you might oddly have Justin Fields,
well, if you're again,
you might have Fields, you might have Williams from
it,
Chicago, something like that.
yeah, if you're against me this week in fantasy, then I'd definitely drop Jaden Daniels.
Yeah,
I just don't see him doing any good this week. He'll probably be terrible. Throw a few picks. Just drop him, please,
just bin him straight off. Yeah.
please drop him.
no, there's some great picks there though, and some interesting ones. What about running backs?
Yeah. So it's the running back situation, as you say, you've got your known quantities. Saquon's going to be starting for pretty much everybody because I think Dallas defense has now lost their heart and soul, so they'll probably be a bit loose around the middle and not have too much going for them. So you're obviously starting him and stuff like that. So I don't want to be going there. James Cook is an obvious one as well in Buffalo. Going on the theme, Fletch, you've got to be starting James Conner. You have to. If you've got him sitting there, you've
Yeah,
stashed James Conner, you're starting him this week. He is going to run all over that porous, bad New Orleans Saints team. They're going to just pound those guys to smithereens. Connor will probably feast. To be honest, it's also a weird one because I was thinking about you start him, but then I reckon it's going to be so bad that he may only play 2/3 of the game. And it's a weird one. So you start him to hope that he doesn't then, run too badly and score enough that he doesn't then, when he does get sacked, because he's already scored 2 touchdowns, ran for 190 yards and caught 3 passes, and et cetera, et cetera. So James Conner's my number one start. Second start, this is where it gets a tricky one. I want. I'm going to go Chubba Howard. And it was a bit of an odd one because I think he's just the workhorse. They've got nobody else basically. It's a toss up between him for the Panthers, or it was going to be uh, Pollard at Tennessee. Those are my two. It was a coin flop between those two. Um, Either offenses have got massive amounts of depth behind that number one running back. So if you're looking for volume, you're looking for making sure that these guys are going to get their touches. There's not much behind those two. But I'll go Chuba this week. I just think it's a slightly better matchup for them.
Yeah,
Oh,
I like both of those picks. I'm a big fan of. I think I picked up Connors in quite a lot of leagues, just because he's one of those tough runners. But I do think the only thing I would probably say with it is I could probably see Benson getting quite a few reps as well in that game,
Yeah.
just because of the nature of how the game might play out. And also just because you don't want to get your star running back out injured that early. So I wouldn't surprise me if you probably see a fair bit of Benson. I still think Connor will be still definitely worth starting, but I think, Benson might be one to keep an eye on, especially if you've got like deep leagues and you need to have someone flex. It might be a useful one to have at flex, but
yeah.
and yeah, Chuba Hubbard's another one of those. I quite like him, and I think Carolina are probably going to run the ball a bit more this year, which
Yeah.
means he's likely to get more involvement. Again, he doesn't have anyone in the backfield to come to challenge him because Brooks is out injured. Brooks?
Brooks is back on IR again, I think.
Yeah, he's out for the year.
He's out for
So
the
he
year
won't.
again. I don't even know who they're back at.
Rico
Sanders,
Dowdle.
Rico
It's Rico
Dowdle or
Dowdle.
Sanders, or isn't he Miles
And
Sanders?
they've
Is he
got
still in?
Trevor Etienne as well. They picked up Trevor Etienne.
Trevor, yeah.
Um, but I was gonna say they've just let go of well, Adam Thielen's just left as well. He's just left the building. Their receiver core, according to their depth chart anyway, um, their top three receivers are Tech Mac, Xavier Legette, and David Moore. Then in behind him, you've got Hunter Renfro, Jimmy Horn Jr., Bryson Tremaine, Datavion Campbell, Jalen Coker's on
IR.
IR. Um,
Yeah.
Genuine quite Tech Mac. We don't know what we're going to get from him yet. He's a rookie. Xavier Legette didn't exactly light the league up
Right.
last year, particularly.
No.
David Moore. If I'm a DB, even as a white DB, I'm not looking at David Moore and going, I'm getting cooked here. Um, it's nothing about that wide receiver core to me screams dangerous. If they gel and they get something going, great. But that also for me adds to give the ball to Chuba Hubbard. Give it to Chuba Hubbard. He was one of my favourite picks last year. I found him on waivers last year at some point, and
Yeah. He
you
wasn't.
just
He's not a fancy. He's not a fancy runner. He's not a flashy runner. He's on a team that nobody really
yeah,
liked, and that's it. But the thing is, there is nothing else in that backfield. It
And I
is
think I
Chuba
think
Hubbard's backfield. So
I think as well, what's worth sort of looking at, especially with Trevor Hubbard, is he spent most of his early career being a bit of a journeyman. Like he didn't really seem to
but
fit in anywhere. I think you look at his stats. This was the first season, or last season was the first season he ever broke 1,000 yards in a single season, and he doubled the number of touchdowns that he got from 23 to 24, from 5 to 10. So, you know, he's already shown that he can make that step up. But like you say, he's on a team that I think is very undervalued in fantasy. I think a lot of people see the Carolina Panthers as being one of the lesser teams that you just kind of, okay, well, he's there, I'll pick him up. But actually, I think he has a lot of value. And like I say, all those issues that they have in wide receiver and tight end. I mean, obviously they've got Javian Sanders, but he spent a lot of last year injured as well. So
yeah,
he's never really been able to get sort of hitting the ground running. So yeah, I think that's a solid pick for me. I'm a fan of Hubbard. I think he's a good running back.
yep.
and so my sit ones this week. You're sitting. Oh, this is an awkward one. You're sitting Chase Brown.
Wow.
Mm. I think that Browns defense is probably going to step up a bit. I think they've got a bit of a point to prove. I would sit him because I think you'll end up Joe and Jamar might rip through the air rather than on the ground. And I think you're sitting Genty, even though he's the number one and everyone thinks he's going to be amazing and he's had a good preseason. I just don't think he's going to put the numbers up.
Interesting. I like the
I mean,
Chase Brown call, by the way. I actually really like the Chase Brown call.
Brown
I mean,
against the Bengals.
again, he is against Browns and it's going to be an arm wrestle. But Chase Brown's another one that I this week is an odd one, but Chase Brown I'm fully in on because the Bengals don't have much else again behind him. They picked up a rookie, but I think he's fifth, sixth round rookie rather than any of the early round rookies that were flying around. So I do think it's going to be his backfield and he will do well, but just not this week. I just think week one for Genty's just too much to go for on that one. I think it's going to be a bit of an arm wrestle. They've got to get used to things. And I would sit him and save him for better times.
And like you say, they've still got Mostert, and he
Yeah.
still has a job he can do.
Yeah.
Like, he's still a good running back. I mean, you saw what he did um, when he was at the Dolphins and how he was used, even though they had Devon Achane. Like he's still an important part that needs to be remembered because he will put up points.
He will score and he will stretch defenses. Yeah.
But saying that as well, I say with Chase Brown, the one of the things that you've never really been able to say about the Browns, particularly over the last few years, is that D line has always been a bit nasty. They've always seemed to play a good game. They always seem to play good games against the division, or at least to my recollection, they play good games against the division. And maybe a little bit of homerisms in here, but I can't wait to see Mason Graham inside that D line as well. And see, I think he's gonna be a bit of a wrecking ball. Whether he's a wrecking ball in his first game is yet to be seen. But if he's as advertised, he should be a wrecking ball in that game. So on the outside, you're running into Myles Garrett. Oh dear. On the inside, you're running into Mason Graham. Oh dear.
Yeah.
Your
Yeah.
only other option, F
But
it. Jamar Chase is up there somewhere.
yeah. That's the only reason I went that way. I just think it's going to be the Bengals will beat the Browns through the air
Yeah.
rather than on the ground. And in a battle of the rookie running backs, I've got a feeling Henderson will probably come out with better stats in that Patriots Raiders game than Genty. But if you wanted an honourable mention, make sure you're sitting Amari Hampton.
Yeah, because Najee Harris has just been said he's just taken full participation, hasn't he?
Yeah.
So
Najee will
have
be
some.
turning up with his eye patch on and whatever else, plus the fact you're going against the Chiefs defense, which is not pleasant.
Yeah, in Brazil as well.
Yeah.
Do you not think playing in Brazil and potentially that field being a bit rough? Obviously if it rains a bit, probably see them hand the ball off a little bit more, but that rough field might think he'd rather just leave it to the air in that game. Don't want him doing too much on the ground.
Yeah, I could see that being the case. Right, well, we'll swiftly move on to wide receivers. Obviously, Andy is going to be taking wide receivers. He isn't here today, but he has given us his starters and sits for this week. So, Fletch, I don't know if you want to roll with
I do.
what Andy has sent us.
Right, it's the only way I can really do it. Can you see the player?
Yeah.
Audio player, yeah.
Yeah, for the receiver start sets. So I'm going to go quite rookie. Feels quite rookie heavy for the starts this week. It's not something I'd usually do. I quite like to see a bit of data behind new receivers, see what the connection is with the quarterback. But I've just got a feeling about some of these guys from what we've seen from preseason, what we've heard from training camps. So The first start for this week I have gone for is Keon Coleman against the Baltimore Ravens for the Buffalo Bills. I think Coleman sort of flashed in places last year. It looked to be quite a good connection with Josh Allen. Obviously, Amari Cooper's no longer there. I feel like his sort of big competition is Sakir, who's coming off an injury. Kincaid in his second year wasn't as good as his rookie year. So there's a bit of a sort of, I think there's an opportunity there for Coleman to really establish himself as Josh Allen's number one wide receiver. And what better way to do it against the Ravens this week? I think it's going to be a bit of a shootout. I can see it being a very high scoring end to end. I mean, what a start to the season. This could possibly be sort of the final two standing in the AFC sort of January time. So I'm gonna put Coleman forward. He's someone who across pretty much all my drafts I've taken in the later rounds as well. So I'm really hoping to sort of really see him start showing out this year. The second guy I'm going for is Ted McMillan. I think Carolina, are going to improve. I think they've been absolutely dire the last few years, and they've not really had a dominant receiver. They've had sort of Adam Thielen's now gone back to the Vikings, which I'm delighted about. Jalen Coker's on IR. They brought in Hunter Renfro. I don't really think Bryce Young's got anyone else to throw the ball to. So I think purely from a volume perspective, I think McMillan's going to get an awful lot of targets. He's a big guy. He's going to be a big sort of end zone targets. I think he's just going to rack up receptions as sort of the game goes on. And I think against Jacksonville, nice place for him to start the season. I can see him really sort of laying down a marker for the rest of the year. So Coleman and McMillan, they're my two starts for this week. I think they're both gonna go off from a fantasy perspective. Sort of the guy, sort of an honourable mention, if you may. I think Egbuka, the Bucks receiver, no Godwin. The Bucks throw the ball an awful lot. They've got Mike Evans is going to be drawing a lot of attention. I just feel like a rookie on week one. I think Xavier Worthy did last year, and we'll come on to him shortly because he's in my sit category. But there always seems to be a rookie who goes off week one. I think the league don't know enough about him. Lots of the stuff coming out of the Buccaneers camp is they like Egbuka. Baker loves him. So I think he's going to get targets. He's going to get receptions. And I feel like he could be sort of one of those, if you're on the fence about do I, don't I, there's probably more solid, more proven options. Sort of Ed Booker was being drafted sort of around sort of Jalen Waddle, around Chris Olave, around Xavier Worthy, that sort of place in drafts. I think he's won. I think against Atlanta as well, their secondary really last year was quite poor. Obviously, an NFC South matchup as well. I think that again could be another high scoring game, a bit of a shootout. So he's someone who I sort of hang my hat on as well. In terms of players who I would be sitting this week, none of which across any of my drafts I actually own, so I feel like I can go in on these guys a bit more. First off, Josh Downs for the Colts. I think there's been a lot of talk about him having a bit more of a breakout year this year. I think he is coming off a bit of an injury as well, but I guess one thing with the Colts we just don't know. Last year, obviously, with Richardson, they're quite run heavy with Richardson, with Taylor. From a fantasy perspective, their wide receivers just were not productive at all. Pittman Downs sort of flashed in places as you'd expect. I don't think, again, the quarterback makes such a difference to the receiver position. I think if you look at the guys who are starting, Coleman's got Allen, McMillan's got Bryce Young, who's I think really massively improved towards the end of last season. Ed Booker, again, Baker Mayfield, a very solid quarterback. Josh Downs, whether it's going to be Richardson, whether it's going to be Daniel Jones throwing him the ball, I think he's going to take a bit of a hit throughout the season just because I think the quarterback play will be so poor. And I think Tyler Warren as well is going to eat into his targets and receptions. So he, for me, is definitely a week one sit. The next one is Chris Olave. Again, quarterback play. I think Spencer Rattler, what we saw of him towards the end of last year, I don't think anyone was particularly blown away by. Obviously, New Orleans have found themselves really caught short in the quarterback position, and salary cap, everything else, they've not been able to really replace Derek Carr. It doesn't sound like Tyler Shoff's been up to too much in pre-season. If the bar to clear with Spencer Rattler, I think it's got to be a concern for them from the quarterback position. So I think Olave might find himself generating receptions just because of the way the game script goes. I think Saints are going to find themselves playing from behind an awful lot, but regardless of if they're playing ahead or behind, the guy's got to be able to get the ball to him. And personally, I think this is more an indictment on Rattler than it is Olave. I've been inclined to sit him this week. The last one for me, who is sort of again a lot more honourable mention, I think could find himself just a little bit of a trap, is Xavier Worthy. I know I mentioned him earlier as someone who went off last week. I feel like he's a very boom or bust player. I think Mahomes, again, we can't say the quarterbacks. He's in a bad position with the quarterback here, but I think with the Chiefs, there's so many weapons. I think they don't really have anyone who really hogs targets. I know Kelsey, Rishi Rice, both receiving options. Obviously, Rice is suspended for the first 6 weeks. I feel like Worthy could be a little bit of a trap. I think the Chargers are going to be a lot better this year. I know they've got a few injury woes, but they're a team who I can see making it to the playoffs. This one is really, gut feeling. I've not been drafting him throughout the summer in the drafts I've taken part in. For me, it's just the vibe's not there. It's probably one that will come to bite me in the backside at some point. But yeah, for me, he's a sit this week, but it'll be one which I think will definitely be closely monitored. Obviously, given the Rice situation and Kelsey aging, it is his second year as well. Whether there's a big breakout come in, whether he could really truly fill that Tyreek Hill role, which I don't feel like has ever really been filled. Obviously, it's a huge void to fill, but it'd be interesting to see if he really does step into that role going forwards.
Okay, that's it. You're on mute, Sam.
Help if I take myself off mute. Some interesting picks there. I think we'll start with the Ted McMillan one. I think that was quite interesting. We talked about maybe starting Chuba Hubbard, and one other option might be is that we mentioned that we don't know how that wide receiver core is going to do in the Carolina. I do think it's an interesting one because the Jags last year were the worst defense in the league in terms of, I think, a lot of metrics. So I think in terms of as a rookie friendly start, the Jags is quite a good one to start with. I mean, I know they'll obviously improve on defense, but
Yeah.
If you're a rookie in starting your very first game in the NFL, you kind of want to come up against one of the worst defenses in the league as your first game to get yourself going. And this is probably one of those where he'll benefit. If he's going to benefit at any point, it's going to be this game, potentially. So I don't mind that pick. I have also got him in my home league starting, so I'm happy with that.
I don't mind. I mean, Tech-Mac, I think he's going to be a red zone boom or bust kind of receiver, I think, initially.
He's a big guy, isn't he?
He's a big guy. He's got a huge reach. He's got a huge catch radius. Bryce Young just has to toss the ball. It's very much like Fletch said, lob it over in that corner somewhere. Tech-Mac's over there somewhere. He'll catch it.
Mm.
It's just, will the Panthers get to those red zone opportunities? And as you say, against the Jaguars, maybe they've got a better chance. So I'm not against it. I'd say I'm pretty high on Tech-Mac this year. All over. I think I've got a fair share on him. So I agree with that pick.
Yeah, Egbuka's another interesting one. I think because he's done so well in pre-season, obviously Chris Godwin isn't quite fully back yet. So it's his chance to step up, and like I say, he's probably going to take a lot of targets. Well,
I think
Evan's going to take a lot of attention, which means he's going to probably get a lot of receptions.
Yeah. And I think and nobody likes to see injuries, but I think McMillan got injured pre-season, didn't he? Who was obviously their rookie. He's on IR, so he was probably looking at moving into that sort of second receiver slot, but now it's opened up for a good guy to really, step in and claim that for himself. Yeah, I'm not averse to that pick either.
And then what
Coleman
about
one was an interesting one. I thought the Keon Coleman one against the Ravens defense.
the only thing I could maybe think of that is that Khalil Shakir is going to be he's probably going to be doubled. But I also think that the way that the Bills plays, they do like to spread it about and they do like to run the ball a lot. So it could be that he may not see a lot. But again, I'm very high on Keon Coleman. I really like him as a person. I really like drafting him.
He's an ex-Seminole. I love the guy.
Yeah, I'd love for him to do well. And another year older. He saw, like I said, we saw flashes, but me personally, I would probably choose Shakir over Coleman just because of the connection that Shakir has with Allen. It seemed from last year, he was targeting him all the time. But as well, that Ravens defense can be horrendously awful to face. Especially if you've got someone like Kyle Hamilton marking you the whole game.
You might not see the ball at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the only one that when we pre-listened to that beforehand, it was like, I get the other two. That one's an interesting one, and I can see why, but I can also be like, not so sure myself.
Yeah, and then in terms of the sitters, Worthy's an interesting one.
Yeah,
I don't.
With Rashid Rice's suspension.
Yeah, and who else did they bring in?
They brought in another speedster, didn't they? Late on,
they brought in. Was it Royals?
Jalen Royals.
Yeah. See what the depth chart. I mean, they've got a lot of wide receivers and two very good tight ends.
Yeah. Well, according to the depth chart on ESPN, it's Worthy, Hollywood Brown, Juju as your first three. Royals, but is questionable. You got Tyquan Thornton, Jason Brownlee, and Nico Remigio as well.
So I would, the only thing I would say with that is the fact that how much reliance can you place on the likes of Hollywood Brown and Juju compared to the likes of Xavier Worthy?
Yeah.
And also they like to use Xavier Worthy in those in the running game as well. Because he
sweeps
is
and
rapid.
reverses. He's got wheels, hasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not. Yeah, that's it. So,
I get it, but and again, it's that whole idea of you're in Brazil, you don't know how the game's going to go in Brazil. So yeah,
one of those pre-season, international games that never really takes off.
And the question you've also got there is you mentioned you've got two really good tight ends, but let's face it. Let's be honest, Travis Kelce's production has significantly dropped over the last gradually over the last couple of years. Are we gonna see a Travis Kelce resurgence this year?
Yeah, he's going to have the Taylor effect. He's going to have the engagement.
He's put a ring on it now, so he's going to be flying. Right?
But that goes one of two ways. Either he's now
or he hangs up his cleats, or he's
it's just not the same, and it's like
I got a feeling
the Big
from
Bang
a Chiefs
Theory
perspective. Yeah, I got a feeling it's a Chiefs perspective. It's going to be a Pacheco heavy offense with a few flashes and a few bits and pieces, but I think
and a lot of play action then coming off the top of it.
Play action, hitting the middle, hitting Kelce or the big guys, and then Worthy with his speed just to absolutely take the top off. So yeah, sitting him strikes me as a risk. I get it, but I wouldn't do it myself.
Yeah.
And then who was the other?
Olave was a no-brainer sitter.
Yeah.
Absolutely no-brainer.
Again, I would.
But is Olave in almost that you can't drop him because there's nobody else.
It depends,
especially in a PPR league.
if he's someone that you've say for example, because I know we're looking at just PPR, but if you're looking at someone like in a dynasty league, sorry, you'll have picked Olave, and he may be your star wide receiver.
Yeah.
So are you going to really drop him? But I think if we're talking just solely redraft PPR, you've probably picked him up a lot, and I think he's been going around the same point as Jalen Waddle, and those sorts of wide receivers, sort of like I suppose like your low wide receiver to flex position. I'd maybe not play him, but if you don't have anyone else, then you're going to have to play him, and he'll get targets.
If he's your wide receiver one, you're playing him no matter what. If
Yeah.
he's not, then yeah, he's on the bubble type thing. But yeah, in most leagues, as you say, if you're picking somebody, he is a clear wide receiver one in that room, in that whole team. He's a star receiver. He's almost undroppable. Unfortunately, as he mentioned, QB play is going to be shocking.
Mhm.
A lot of the ball's going to end up at the running back and Alvin Kamara, who was a no-brainer starter for me, which is why I didn't put him in. Because Alvin, he's a running back one potential because he's just going to run in the ball and catch the ball on screens and dump off passes all game. That's all the Saints are going to be able to do.
I mean,
I don't know if Olave's got. I get it, but I don't know if he's.
Olave was out for a little bit last year because Derek Carr threw him a hospital ball. And I don't see Spencer Rattler throwing hospital balls, but I see a lot of Chris Olave's targets probably ending up coming through. Again, it's F it. He's down there somewhere. He's all I've got. Let's try and get out of this. I think you'll see a lot of targets when he's just there's just something that I don't have any confidence in Spencer Rattler at all to get any
Or
sort of job done.
Tyler Shuck is. I mean, he'll be playing sooner rather than later. But I
Yeah,
really don't.
I'd start being more confident.
I'm honestly not sure that Tyler Shuck will because he's looked shocking in preseason.
Yeah.
It's going to just depend on how shocking Spencer Rattler actually looks in real time and how whether you just say, is it worth it to get some shocking Tyler Shuck out, but get used to playing real NFL defenses for a few weeks towards the end of it. But there's nothing in that Saints team that screams, apart from maybe Kamara, that's because we know what Kamara can do, that screams, take it. This is fantasy value right here.
And I think the other sit was Josh Downs, wasn't it? Which is again based around the fact of who the hell is going to be the quarterback in Indianapolis. Last year was
DJ start
Daniel Jones, right? So that might, weirdly enough, benefit the receiving core in Indianapolis better than the QB play last year because Richardson couldn't hit the side of a barn door or any player that was wearing the same team sort of shirt as him.
Or he was too busy needing breaks.
Yeah, taking a break and getting tired or whatever else. So DJ playing might not be the worst thing for some of that receiving core, but they've just used a really high draft pick on Warren. I don't want to talk too much about tight ends because we're leading into that for you, Sam. I agree with what Andy said. Warren's probably going to take a fair chunk of that. You've also you can't overlook the fact that JT's still in the backfield for Indianapolis.
They've still got Mike Pittman as well. I mean, he's still. I still like it.
I'd still like Pittman over Downs, but I get that. I would sit Downs definitely if you had him. If it was one of those. Speaking of Tyler Warren and highly drafted tight end, Sam.
Yeah, thank you, Andy, for your input, and obviously, hopefully, we'll get to see you in the coming weeks where we can talk about these. But tight ends. I've kind of there's a few that I don't want to pick. I'm not going to be picking Trey McBride. It's a no-brainer. I'm not going to be looking at the likes of Brock Bowers, the no-brainers. So for me, it's those ones where maybe you've not taken one of the top, so you've then gone and waited a few rounds and picked up ones a bit later.
Which, if you haven't done that, by the way, if you're still drafting and you're about to draft and you miss out on these top two, Bowers, McBride, Kelsey Kittle, if you miss out on those, draft your tight ends much later this year.
Yeah,
Don't need to be drafting your tight end anywhere. If you miss those 4, wait.
yeah. That's because there's a significant drop off. But the guys that I've gone with as starters, and I think that these are the reason why I picked them is twofold. One, I think the teams that they're playing, it benefits them. And the other side of it is that they're solid picks. They get points every week. They're just workhorses that will just, they'll get you 10 points every week. They'll add to the total point score. The first is David Njoku against the Bengals. The Bengals gave up the most points, the most yards to tight ends than any other team. Gave up the most touchdowns to tight ends of any other team, and the most receptions, I believe. And that Browns team is so bad. The only 2 players that they're going to, if you look back to when Flacco sort of made his resurgence with the Browns, David Njoku ended up being the 6th tight end in all of fantasy because he was just used in like he just was the workhorse of that
safety
team.
blanket, wasn't he? He was literally just Flacco just went tight end. Yeah.
And I think no matter who the starting QB is going to be in the Browns, whether it is going, well, obviously it's going to be. I think Flacco is starting as the number 1 this year, but it could easily switch. It could switch to Sanders. It could switch to Gabriel.
No, Gabriel first, but then Sanders. I think it's Flacco, Gabriel, Sanders, isn't it? Is the official.
It could switch to any of them, but the one thing I always think is, if it's going to be Flacco, he's going to go to the guy that he knows, and that's going to be David Njoku, and it's going to be Judy. I think he might favour Njoku a little bit more because, again, it's those easy yards, those 10, 15 yards he always seems to pick up, and he's physical. And, he plays well with him. He knows him. If it's going to be a rookie, I always think rookies lean on tight ends, especially receiving tight ends, a lot more. So, again, if we did end up seeing Gabriel come into the game, again, he may target Njoku more than Judy. So my first pick is David Njoku. My second one, again, is another one who is a stable, solid tight end, and that's Hunter Henry against the Raiders. Again, the Raiders gave up over 1,000 yards to tight ends last year. They were the 5th most in yards and the 2nd most in touchdowns. So again, 9 touchdowns against tight ends. And I just think, although obviously they've got a lot more in terms of receiver core, May did target Henry 97 times, which is the most in Henry's career.
Oh.
So to me, again, start first game of the season, bedding yourself in, you're going to want to throw to someone who is going to get you yards, who's going to get you points, who's going to, especially when you see these sort of, you've got Max Crosby coming flying at you, you're going to need to dump it off quick. He's going to be the guy you're going to dump it off to. So I think he's going to do really well again. So those are my 2 starters going into week 1.
Mm-hmm. Solid. Yeah. Your reasonings stand out. The Bengals shockingly bad against tight ends. Shockingly bad. Flacco, old hat, not going to want to hang around too much, not going to hold the ball too long. Njoku's going to get open. He's a big physical target. You can't miss him in the middle of the field. Yeah, I think, I'm high on Njoku this year because of the fact that Flacco's number 1. I think it's a good call.
That Bengals defense, especially linebacker position, haven't exactly strengthened well. From what obviously they've got Logan Wilson, and then they brought in a rookie who looks like he's going to be starting as the weak side linebacker. That's going to be Njoku, who's going to eat him up all day. So
all day.
Yeah, and interesting with the Drake May going to who he knows. Definitely makes sense there.
Mm-hmm. I think just for week 1, and maybe Henry's always one of those where I think he's a bailout tight end. When you don't have anything else and you're struggling, they use him a lot. And I've always been a fan of taking, especially when you've sort of like say if you're not going to be drafting a tight end early, you want someone who's reliably going to put up solid 8,
10,
9,
12, 10, yeah. If you can get 8 to 12 points solidly every week from workhorse guys, and every now and again they flash, then great.
Yeah.
In terms of on the, sorry, Fletch, who do you have?
I was gonna
something
say
to.
I like the Hunter Henry as well.
Yeah.
I was debating Drake May as one of my picks for quarterbacks this week. I've been vocal about being quite high on what I think the Patriots are gonna do this year. Hunter Henry seems like a very solid pick as well.
And then in terms of my sits, again, I've sort of followed the same pattern of who did well against tight end last year and who has either improved or stayed relatively the same in terms of keeping players and keeping teams and things like that. And because of that reason, I've gone as my first sit is Jake Ferguson, who is playing the Eagles week one. Obviously, he's playing Thursday night as the opening game. Last year, the Eagles allowed only 591 yards to tight ends. They only allowed 5 touchdowns and only 68 receptions all season against tight ends. To me, Dak's going to want to get it to CD Lamb. He loves throwing to CD Lamb. He's now got Pickens, who I think he's going to probably be wanting to throw to him and also maybe forced to throw to him. And the Cowboys also like to have they seem to do a lot of 2 tight end formations, which then obviously see Shoemaker picking up a few targets as well, which obviously then impacts on Jake Ferguson. Ferguson also missed a good part of last year with injury.
Last year, yeah. A bit of a step back as well, didn't he?
Yeah, he didn't seem to. First year he was brilliant. Second year he just had a bit of a downer, and I just don't see it being any different in this opening game.
Especially not against that Eagles defense.
No, that Eagles defense is nasty, and especially sort of if he's coming up against what's the guy called? Is it Spawn? Is he still there, or did he go to the Raiders? Who was the guy that was put up for Defensive Player of the Year, the linebacker for Eagles? Can't think what his name
My
is.
God. Hang on, I'll get it for you. Nolan Smith Jr.
No, it wasn't him. It was Zach Bourne. That was it, Zach
That's
Bourne.
that one.
Yeah, so Zach Bourne obviously had a brilliant year last year. He's returned, and he's probably just going to do the same. He's going to be a wrecking ball. And Jihad Campbell. Obviously, we've talked about him on the Hurdle Line podcast. Obviously, he's been touted as potentially being a Rookie of the Year nominee.
Yeah.
Defensive Rookie of the Year. Sorry. So he could obviously have a very good year, and he looks by all means a great player. So again, he could be someone to cause a bit more problems as well in that sort of middle zone throwing or short zone throwing. The other one that I have again is someone who I'm actually quite high on in general in terms of fantasy, but I also think probably isn't going to be one to play, or certainly I've got him as a sit, so he's definitely not one to look at. And that is Tucker Kraft for the Packers against the Lions. Again, the Lions were the 3rd best team for yards allowed. They only, again, similar to the Eagles, only had 66 receptions allowed and had only 3 touchdowns allowed to tight ends. The way that the Lions play, I just think that with Anzalone and Jack Campbell in those linebacker positions, they just cause havoc. And Anzalone, I think, for me, is probably one of the most underrated linebackers in the league. He is unbelievable at reading the play. And I think that doesn't help someone like a Tucker Kraft, who, who's going to need, your tight ends always need a little bit of space. And I love that physicality. But I just think Anzalone is just the opposite. He wrecks games. And I think that he could be one that suffers because of that. And obviously, Jordan Love's going to want to throw it to the likes of, Matthew Golden, who they've just brought in. He's going to want to throw it to Dobbs. He's going to need to.
Who have they got actually at receiver?
Romeo. They've got the same Romeo Dobbs.
Dobbs.
Jaden Reed.
Jalen
Devon,
Reed. They've got Matthew Golden, who they've brought
Dontavian
in.
Wicks.
Yeah, and obviously Christian Watson, who's on IR. But again, a lot of options at wide receiver. And obviously, we saw Tucker Craft benefited last year, where because Musgrave didn't do particularly well. Could we see a reverse of that? Could Musgrave benefit this year and Craft not? It is something that could possibly happen. But I just think that Lions defense is probably, I think it's going to do quite well against the tight ends, and obviously it's proven that they did last year. So for me, he's probably one that I would not start against them.
I'm interested to see on that front though what Kelvin Shepherd does, and also if we do, it's still being flirted, but nothing's actually come of it yet with Zadarius Smith coming back in the building. If Zadarius Smith comes back in the building, then I'd say yeah, absolutely great. If not, yes, Tyreek Williams will be will be on that D line. We'll still have quite a Hutch will be back. We'll still have a bit of a nasty interior, but I still think we need something else on that edge. And if not, if something like that doesn't come in, we've still got, I think, a massive hole opposite Hutch, and that could see potentially Alex Anzalone. They like to drop him down. Sometimes they like to bring him back to the line. They like to have him coming and doing some run stuff in, try and join in some form of a pass rush. Whether they start to bring some of the corners in on the pass rush as well, I don't know. Just it's that pass rush is going to need some help. So if we can get as a Darius Smith in, absolutely, I'm more than happy. I'd be more than happy with them just leaving Alex Anzalone and Jack Campbell there to tell Tucker Craft to, you know, go back to Green Bay. Don't get comfy here. But no, actually, we'll be in Green Bay, so we can't go back
Yeah.
anywhere. But yeah, I see what you mean. I like it. I like the pick, obviously, and it could be an interesting one for sure, depending on how that D line ends up looking, and if they need to bring anyone down.
Still got Gary. Is he still here?
Yeah, I'm
He is.
still here.
Unusually quiet.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's
Lost him.
little to argue with the reasoning. It's the Lions defense is going to shut that down. I can't
I think
see.
the difficulty with tight ends is you tend to find tight ends generally either blow up or don't do much because it depends on how they're being
I know
used
utilized
in.
in the team.
Yeah, if especially with a lot of these sort of dual threat tight ends where they have to do the blocking and they also are receivers. Sometimes you end up, it's a game where they need to be a blocker and they don't need to be a receiver. Other games they need to be a receiver and not a blocker. And I think that's where, like I say, if they do bring in someone like Zadarius Smith, or if the D line, so the O line is struggling, they may need to obviously have a more blocking tight end, which means that they may look to Musgrave or someone else. But
Yeah,
it also could mean that they, again, they could go for a two tight end formation and have Kraft out in the backfield. So it just depends. But I just think that if we're just going based, obviously those are sort of more nuanced in-game things. But I think if we're looking at just purely from a stat perspective, and that's sort of, I suppose, the only reason I can go with in terms of tight ends is who does the best against them and who's the worst. And obviously we can't tell it from this year because there's been no games. So I think for me, it's just, those are the two that I would just be erring on the side of caution. Again, it's very similar to the Chris Olave is you might find that Tucker Craft is your only tight end, or you've picked him as your number one tight end, and your next tight end is, I don't know, someone like Tyler Higbee, and you've picked him up really late because you had no one else to get. So you might not have a choice. But I would be, I wouldn't be comfortable with picking Tucker Craft as a starting tight end. But then again, I've in most leagues have very much gone for either Sam Laporta or Trey McBride or Ballard. I've made sure I've got that tight end early and then picked up a Tucker Craft as a backup. So
pick up a workhorse
for me,
later,
it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But for someone who's not got one of those and needs a tight end, they're likely going to have a Tucker Craft, Dallas Goedert, those sorts of
Yeah.
mid to low picks. So
our
I think
team.
that's every position that we've covered. And obviously, maybe at another point we might look at defensive players, we might look at kickers, we might look at defenses as a whole.
I mean, as you say, as we alluded to at the beginning, there are whole variances of different types of games, different types of fantasy that has exploded over time. IDP, kickers, this, that, and the other, different rules, tight end premium, super flexes, and stuff like that. So, this is starting off with the basics, which is just your, QB, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and a tight end. Yeah, a very simplest format, in PPR. So we'll come back. We'll have a check on the Sam. You've hopefully taken note of everything.
Yeah, well, I've sort of remembered them. If not, I'll be checking them as we go along anyway. As I probably have most of these players in at least one league. But yes, so again, lovely chat. Obviously, being able to chat with you and anyone who's obviously, if they've got bored of us by this point, well.
Should have got used to us by now, because if you listen to the college football
if you
podcast,
haven't got used to the 1.5, 2 hour pods from us, then you obviously haven't been listening to the college ones or the other ones that we do. But lovely speaking to you guys about this. Obviously, we'll be here next week to look over the picks that we've done and to bring our week 2 picks. But if I don't speak to you beforehand, enjoy the football being back.
Was back this week.
And as opposed to the ones who are sick of our voices, we'll go for the ones who've never really looked up college football content before, but they've got a fantasy football podcast. I'll listen to, whoa, these 3 guys are absolutely, they're gorgeous human beings, but they're also so knowledgeable. They talk so eloquently, and I need to hear more of them. Come back tomorrow on the College Football UK podcast, and you can get more of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can listen to only talking about Texas.
So, well, it'll be interesting hearing what you have to say about Texas tomorrow.
I'm going to be stood on a soapbox talking about Texas.
I will. I might join you on that one. I'm not going to talk about Texas.
That soapbox might get run over by a horse. I'm just going to say that.
I do think though it's becoming one of those points at this moment in time where I don't think I can have a conversation with my wife without both you two there to be part of the conversation. I can't talk without either of you, and I like it. That's the way I like it. It really is.
That's the way the Sleep at Work network works. No, Sam, I appreciate you putting this together. This has been fun.
Absolutely,
it's been interesting. A completely different, slightly different aspect of it, slightly different way of looking at it. But as we said at the beginning, fantasy football adds a layer to your fandom, and hopefully we've given a few thoughts to people. People have listened in and kind of appreciated where we're coming from. Hopefully they win. I'll be interested to tune into the Hurdle Online to hear your pick'ems and see if I follow them or go with them for fantasy game day or not.
And if you're still here, the Discord, by the way, we have a dedicated fantasy football channel. If you want to come and talk to us about our picks, share your picks, share how you got on at the weekend, we'd love to see them. Like, we're all in there. We'd love to see how you get on. Unless you do badly, then don't.
Or even better.
We would quite like to hear how other people go into fantasy football as well.
Yes.
So again, join the Discord, share your opinions on there. When this podcast obviously goes out on all the socials, comment on them. Say how you go into fantasy football, what your favourite parts are. We like to hear all those stories, and all of your favourites and hot picks, hot takes, and all that. And if you agree with us, then great. If you don't, well, don't tell us. No, do tell us. We like
us and argue with us. Tell us
constructive arguments, well, constructive criticism, and also some debates. And that is the whole point of this. Is we're not here to say we know everything. We just like to share our opinions. So, guys, have a lovely evening, and we'll see you all next week.
Take care, guys.